Welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I'm Amanda Poole-Walsh, founder of Astrology Hub and your host for our flagship show. We explore the many ways astrology can support you in your relationships, career, health, and personal growth. Thanks for tuning in.
This podcast episode is brought to you by the Inner Circle, your place to learn astrology in community with the masters and transform your life in the process.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I am so excited to be here with all of you and very excited. I always love connecting with business and financial astrologer, Georgia Stathis. Georgia is just one of the most amazing living legends of astrology that we have available to us today. And I love her so much. I always love connecting with you, Georgia. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Well, Georgia's also an upcoming Inner Circle astrologer next year, 2023. But what we wanted to do is introduce a topic that comes up a lot. There's a lot of questions around the houses. And so we're doing this series with our Inner Circle astrologers for 2023 to really go through each of the houses in a lot of detail so that you can get a deeper understanding of what each house represents and what it means when you have no planets in a house or a lot of planets in a house, all the different areas of life that the house represents. So Georgia is here to talk to us today about the second house. And Georgia, let's just start with the big picture overview. What is the second house all about?
Well, the second house is part of the first three in the horoscope, which is, right when we're born. I mean, the first three houses, first house will be spoken about in another group, but that's the physical body when it comes in. The second house is about, what is it that has to do with your value for yourself. The second, we're going to talk a lot about that today, is what do you value? I mean, a lot of people think the second house is about money, which it is, but it's bigger than that. It's actually on what I would term, actually Carol Rushman termed this, the axis of desire. The second and the eighth house are the axis of desire. And in the natural zodiac, of course, Venus is the natural ruler of the second house. And Venus in Taurus is a natural second house, is a very organic, very seductive, very feeling, very earthy, very sensual kind of energy. And so the second house has quite a bit to do, especially with the sign that's on the second house, and the planet that rules it will tell you a lot about your chart in terms of, first of all, what you value, even if you don't have any planets in the second house. If you have Gemini, for example, on the second house, your value is you value information and knowledge. And so that's your currency also. And you always want to look to see what planets rule these houses and where they're placed in your horoscope, because that's a clue as to how you can receive those kinds of things in your life, how you can use your currency, or where you best are suited. And of course, you want to look at the aspects to those rulers as well, because if it's, say, a Saturn hard aspect, say Mercury, it doesn't mean that you're never going to have any money. What it means is that you may be very focused on it. You have to remember all the planets, whatever sign is on the second house, whether it's a happy sign or not such a happy sign, as some people call them, everything has its positive and negative. And the other key thing we want to look at too is it's our attitude. This is very important. Our attitudes towards money or resource in general. The thing that's interesting about the second house is what we value is what we make money on. What we value is what we spend money on. So for example, if you have, say, this is general, if you have the sign of Sagittarius on the second house, even if you don't have any planets in there, what do you value? You love freedom. Okay. And where's Jupiter, which rules Sag in your chart? That's where you find your freedom. If you have Libra on the second house, ruled by Venus, that's about what you value is beauty and symmetry and balance and relationships, even though there may be no planets in there whatsoever. And so and you have to find out what that's about. That's why I say the first three, Ray Merriman always called the first three houses in the horoscope the rogue quadrant, which I kind of agree with him. because this is where you establish your independence in the first, second, and third house of who you're going to be in the world. And these are fairly primitive lessons that we have to learn, but they're the functional lessons so that we can move forward in our lives. So that's one comment I wanted to make. I also wanted to mention that, and this is how I work, even if you don't have any planets in the second house, is there a planet in your horoscope that is squaring, say, that house? And that's going to give you more information about how you spend your money or how you spend your time especially because Saturn has to do with time. If you don't have any planets in the second house, don't believe that doesn't mean you can't make money, because it doesn't. And sometimes when you have a lot of planets in there, which a lot of people do, sometimes there's a lot of conversations going on with the archetypes of the planets as to exactly what your values are. The second house also shows the gifts that we have or the skills that we have have not necessarily cultivated in our lives that can help us make money. It's our earning potential. Second house is your earning potential. The eighth house is literally how you, by working with other people's resources, you gain your own. But the second house shows your earning potential. And, for example, if somebody has Saturn in the second house, they might, if they're not very well trained, say, oh, that's a terrible planet to have in the second house. But what it might mean, since Saturn has to do with real estate or organizational work or bones or chiropractic, is that maybe your skills are good at real estate or organizational work or bones or teeth, all the Saturn rulerships. It's the same thing that goes with the planet that rules the house. And the other thing that happens, even if you don't have any planets in the second house, it is quite possible that over time, if you live long enough, which most of us are doing these days, that a planet will perhaps progress into your second house, which will be almost like that. It's kind of like a stage. That's kind of what it's like. It's like the doorway to each house is the curtain. By transit, first of all, when a transit goes into a house, especially a slow transit like Saturn, okay, it takes 2.5 to 3 years. When Saturn walks onto the stage through the curtains of the second house, that means for the next 2.5 years, doesn't mean you're going to be broke. But since Saturn has to do with responsibility, and I see this all the time, people will feel they're not having enough money coming in. But the reality is, if they're smart, which most people are, they're not really having enough extra because they're putting it in something for the future. And that's how I look at it. I look at the second house as being the stage, of what you value, what you feel about yourself. And you have to really know that before you're able to work with other people. That's the key thing too. It also shows it also shows a capacity, since it is in the natural zodiac, a fixed house. It shows your capacity to hold on to things and your capacity or wisdom, perhaps, to be able to know when it's time to let go of things. And that's key, especially what's happening now in the world, because right now, for everybody on the planet, Uranus, which wakes us up, is in the sign of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, which is values. So the entire world is being chaotic about their values. Entire world, along with the eclipses. And so it's not a surprise that we have this chaos going on in the world as far as value and money and extremes. For example, I had a great teacher. I don't know if Jim Shear's around anymore, but in Berkeley, back in the early 70s, he used to teach courses, and he had some really key phrases. And I do remember, he said, if a person, this is for Uranus, he said, if you have Uranus in your natal chart in the second house, he said, and this is funny because Uranus is kind of quirky. The way he put it was, you drive a Mercedes Benz, but you live in a cold water flat, because it's quirky. Uranus in the second house can also indicate a person, or Aquarius on the second house can indicate a person who works on commission. Because Uranus isn't regular. It's jobs, it's groups. It's one day here, and the next day it's gone. Aries or Mars, on the second house, is a person who very pioneering in terms of their ideas to make money. but they have to really learn how to control their spending. They can be impulsive when they're younger. So, all these different signs that are on these houses and the planets that rule them and the planets that square them or trine them, they help you give more information about where you can find your niche, if you will. And that's what the second house is really about. I love the second house. I think it's also about how you put down roots. It also shows what gives you security. Just because a lot of people think, well, security is having a home and a family, and that's not true for a lot of people. Maybe security is where you just have enough to have adventures. That could be Sag on the second, It all depends on the person. And of course, as you grow up and you grow on and you move along, what'll happen if you work with secondary progressions, the house cusps do sometimes change to the next sign. And when that happens, it's really important to look at the planet that's now ruling the new progressed second house, because that'll give you added information about what you consider to be valuable and worthy.
I mean, it's amazing how we can just say, okay, second house, what's it about? And there's so much, there's so many layers. So let's break it down a little bit.
I love the way you break things down. You're really good at that. You're good at this. This is a real skill you have. What is your second house?
It's Pisces. Pisces is my second house. So I'm trying to figure out, as you're talking,
music,
which is
that's we're just talking about that.
Yes. So I would look at I look at Pisces ruling my second house, and
it's the sign on your second house.
Yeah, it's this. Oh, it doesn't rule. It's the sign on my second house.
Right. But the planet that rules Pisces, there's two: Jupiter and Neptune.
Okay.
So where are they placed in your horoscope?
So because Jupiter and Neptune.
Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter is the classical ruler before they discovered planets outside of Saturn, and Neptune after they discovered planets outside of Saturn, which happened around late 1800s. So yes, where those are placed in your chart is where you will find inspiration.
So if I have Jupiter and Gemini,
but what house is it in?
The fifth house.
So you like to play. You love children. You like to take chances. You like to be creative. Mm-hmm. You're speculative. Mm-hmm. Maybe even a little gambler, not in a bad way, but kind of a gambler on ideas.
If I believe in it, like astrology in a lot of ways was a gamble. I mean, come on, it's the weirdest idea ever. And
it is,
and then Neptune in Sagittarius.
But what house is it in?
In the 11th.
Oh, so your resources come from the community.
Okay.
The 11th house is the house of groups, community, the cosmic globe, People know you. You've got a pretty big name right now, and so you have to look to see over time, because we keep evolving, what is moving through the sky and how is it aspecting the planets that rule the second house over time. If Jupiter's aspecting your Neptune in a really positive way, lots of new earnings and earning potential comes in. If Saturn might be coming through, or let's say Saturn, just to keep it simple, hitting your Neptune in some way, which it will be in the next 2.5 years when it goes into Pisces, and Saturn will be going through your second house, you're going to get rid of some things that you've been doing that no longer work for you. Because Saturn has a lot to do with, distilling, clearing things out to get minimally to the bare bones of what's valuable. But you're not interested in making any money that doesn't inspire you. Oh. That's Pisces on the second house. If it's not inspiring, you're not even going to give it the time of day.
Nope.
You have to be inspired.
I tried that and it was horrible.
It always works poorly when you don't listen.
Exactly. Okay, so everybody looks at the sign that, and if you're looking at the little wheel and you haven't looked
your wheel, your circle,
the circle, it's the one that happens before the house. So that's the sign right on the cusp. Is the sign?
It's right on the line. It's right on the line. The sign is right on the line.
Right. It's right on the line, and then the house happens. I used to look at it and be like, wait, is it the one before or the one after? Like,
no, it's the one before. Think of it as the stage with the curtain closed. Mm-hmm. Because each house is a room. And when you walk into a room, sometimes by transit, a planet will walk into any house, second house in this discussion. But like it might be, here's a good example. Maybe you have 0 Aquarius. This is an example. 0 Aquarius on your second house in your natal chart. All right. Well, transit Pluto that's moving through the sky is going to go into Aquarius in January, which means it's going to put its toes outside of the curtain and walk into your second house. Okay. But it's not going to stay there for very long. Then it's going to back out and go retrograde. And then it's going to go back in over the next 2 years. And then it's going to go retrograde. So Pluto trying to get into the second house, but leaving it. It's like, I'm not sure if I want to start this show. I don't know if I want to make a choice. Where do I need to clean up my finances? This is a 2-year process if you have 0 Aquarius on your second house. It's not going to happen the first time Pluto enters there because planets walk in, then they retrograde out, and then they walk in, except for the moon. The moon just moves. And that's how it works for each house. But when you're looking at the second house, that's very important because it's going to be a moment every year, especially when there's a new moon, say, in your second house, where you've got to reevaluate your earnings and your value. Or what are you valuing? Where are you not valuing? Where do you find support? Where do you not find support? And make a clean break of the old year and make a new start for the new year. That's what a new moon is all about. And what we value equals how we spend our resources. I love the second house because it really shows, if you want to think about a baby and then a teenager and then an adult and then an old person, okay? A baby, well, you have children. They were little. When they're first starting to walk, they're not exactly steady on their feet. That's what the first, second, and third house are about. It's about learning to walk in the shoes that are most comfortable for you in terms of your values. And it doesn't happen right away. It takes years and years and years and years to do that. We have to all go through our lessons. The second house will show how we spend our money. Some people will spend money on, I don't know, investments. You might have Scorpio on the second house. Okay. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. Pluto rules the 8th house. Investments might be what you spend your money on. But if you're say Virgo on the second house, you might not spend your money on investments. You might spend your money on a house cleaner, or you might spend your money on getting your place organized. Or you might spend your money on improving your database, because that's very Virgo and that's what you value. Some people could give a darn about how organized their computers are. They're definitely not going to be a Virgo on the second house. Virgo on the second house is going to make sure they're organized, and they're going to value health because Virgo is about health and having systems that are clean. Okay. One of their skills that they might have with Virgo on the second house would be that they have an amazing ability to edit or to see where there's something wrong, like that fabric is not the fabric I ordered, it's got a flaw in it. We need to return it, know how to budget. They might be really good at that, but somebody who has maybe Leo on the second house, and I'm being general, may not really care because they just want to have fun. And they're going to spend their money on fun or creative pursuits, and none of it's wrong. This is what's cool. None of it is wrong. It's all right. But you have to figure out over time. And, as you mature, you figure that out, especially after you go through midlife crisis between 38 and 43, what works for you and what doesn't. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I know I'm going off a little bit on tangents here.
Keep going on tangents.
I have tangents.
I'm going to ask you some questions.
Sure.
All right. So Georgia, the first thing that most people think about when they think of the second house is money.
Mm-hmm.
And so is the second house a place in your chart that can help you in finding money? Like if you're someone who's has had a hard time making money, can the second house point you in the direction of where you're going to actually be able to make money?
Because the sign that's on the house cusp, even if you don't have any planets in there, will give you an indicator where you can find money, because the planet that rules that house cusp, Mercury ruled second house, you can find money in all the Mercury ruled occupations: writing, traveling, selling, commerce, sales. Okay. If you have Libra on the second house, maybe the way you make your money is through, believe it or not, the law, which is legal, the scales, but it's also, which is a little oddball tangent, but it works. It's also interior design and textiles.
Yeah.
And textile fabrics. That's Libra. Okay.
Mhm.
Or consulting, because Athena, I don't want to get off on too much of an archetypal thing. That's another course I'm teaching. But consulting people to show them the best way to make their work possible. I know there was a question about Chiron, but Chiron we don't know exactly what it rules. But one of the things that is important, if you do have Chiron, like in the second house natally, you might be very good at holistic work or healing work or chiropractic, which is interesting because Chiron is chiropractic. Or you may also be very good at taking old technologies and looking at new technologies and working in a situation where you coach people to create a bridge between old ways of doing things and new ways of doing things. That's Chiron in the second house. Many times I see people who do work in the healing industry, whether it's traditional or non-traditional medicine, because that's Chiron, or herbal work too. That's another thing.
Okay. So if Chiron's in the second house, then these are the kinds of occupations you can have success with.
Yes. And what may happen, to go a little further with Chiron, because Chiron, Joyce Mason was a good friend of mine. She used to say Chiron is like Pluto, except he leads you more gently. To get to the other side of what it is you're going to make your money on, you have to have had the experience of some sort of a loss related to that. And the way I know this is it's another tangent, but it works. Like, for example, Weight Watchers. Okay. You're not going to listen to somebody who's never had a weight problem in their life, who's telling you how to lose weight, right?
Right.
But you are going to listen to somebody who was 200 pounds overweight and who worked through the program and has kept it off for many years. That's going to be the right coach to talk to. But they had their own experience of wounding that got them to that. Okay. So that's part of Chiron in the second house. There may be, I'm not being negative here, I'm just saying it's the way it is. You may have to go through some sort of tripping up of something before you are able to make money in the holistic field or the coaching field or the hybrid field or, whatever it's related to.
But it makes you that much more believable and authentic, and people
Yeah.
are much more willing to listen to you.
You're not gonna, well, maybe you will. I don't think it's real smart, but you're not going to listen to people who haven't had the experience that are trying to sell you something.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe you will, but I don't work that way. Yeah. I've done it though. I've been sold several times. Yeah. I've been sold when I was younger on a lot of things I should have been sold on, but now it's different. When you get older, you learn a few things. So
But the little wisdom there, huh?
Well, not much, not a little bit.
Okay.
Tiny bit. Okay.
All right. I know that financial astrology trading has been getting more and more popular lately. Like this idea that you can use astrology to help you with trades. And does the second house have anything to do with that?
If you have a lot of fixed energy on the second house, like Taurus or Leo, you may not trade. Are you talking about day traders? You're not talking about long-term investors.
Right.
You're talking about day traders.
Day
traders are associated with Mercury, which rules Gemini, or Virgo, which are the analysts, right? They're the ones that have the anxiety level that they're okay with to go in and make these trades, in and out, day in and day out. Or if you have Mercury, say, in your second house, but you have to look at the whole chart. I would never, ever say, oh, anybody who has this is going to be a trader, because it is a very dangerous, unless you really have some experience. But it's more mercurial. Trading is more mercurial. Long-term investment is very different. It's more Plutonian, where you hold on to things, or Saturn. But if you have Gemini in the second house, you might do several different things, one of which is trading, or you might have 3 different occupations. because you get bored, you know. Air signs on the second house are really, your currency has to do with ideas. Air signs.
Yeah.
Fire signs on any fire signs on the second house, because the currency might be inspiring people, like let's go do this, or let's do something physically. Let's start something. Let's make something happen. Earth signs, any earth signs on the second house, they're going to want to be a little usually slower, carefully plotting, it's kind of the tortoise and the hare, although they have the potential to reach wealth, because of that. And then the last one is water. Water has to be inspired, I think. And any water signs on the second house, Pisces or Scorpio or Cancer, it has to have something to do with, I think, melding with other people. Where there's some sort of a merging of sorts with other people. And that's how you make your living, more sensitive. I think water signs on the second house are very, very sensitive. Not always as sure about their finances as maybe some of the others. You might take a little longer, like an earth sign, to decide things.
Okay, so we looked at the top questions that people have about the second house. And one thing that came in was very interesting. A lot of people asking about the second house and sensuality. Do these have anything in common?
I absolutely believe so, because Venus is the natural ruler of the second house. And Venus in Taurus is very sensual. And it's your comforts, it's your possessions. That's what the second house, what planets are in there, or what houses, what sign is on the second house, will tell you about what you consider to be comfortable. Like a Libra or a Taurus on the second house, they want soft fabrics.
Yeah.
They do not want harsh fabrics, right? And it is very sensual, and it's what you value too. So, maybe their idea of sensuality, if it's like, say, an air sign on the second house, like Aquarius or Gemini or Libra, it could also be their sensuality is the mind. It may not be so much the body, but is that mind drawing me in? Earth might be a massage draws me in, because it's earth, it's tangible, it's connected. Okay. Fire might be, the adventure. That's sensual to me, going camping and having a lot of sex. That's definitely Sag on the second house, right? Or any fire sign on the second house. So it is a sensual house. And I think but more than that, it has to do with what possessions, what do we buy? What will make our environment feel comfortable, and that can change over the years. People do change, but that can change over the years as progressions happen.
Okay, so I don't have any planets in my second house.
A lot of people don't.
A lot of people don't. Okay, why is that?
Because there's 12 houses and there's only 10 planets.
But okay, so a lot of people don't have.
That's about as simplistic as I can make it.
A lot of people don't have any planets in any house.
Oh,
it's not. It's not
they
particular to the second house.
No, they can have other houses that have no planets.
Okay.
That's very feasible.
Right, exactly. So we all have houses where there's no planets. Yes.
Right. The chart changes every 26,000 years, and even if you're born 3 or 4 minutes later, you could have a different distribution in the houses. So, just because you don't have planets in houses doesn't mean anything. It's still the sign that's on the cusp, the curtain, the stage, and the planet that rules it and where that's placed, which will give you the room or the arena in which you can make your money, or you can express your talents. And then, of course, are there any aspects? If people don't understand aspects, I'm going to keep it simple. Squares, conjunctions, sextiles. I mean, there's a million aspects. I'm keeping the Ptolemaic aspects, the simple ones. What are the aspects to the ruler of the chart? Because that'll also tell you more about how you can make money.
So it doesn't, I've heard before that if you don't have planets, if you do have a lot of planets in a certain house, that it means you have a lot more assignments there. Like you have more work to do there. Could that be a correct interpretation?
That's one. This could be one good interpretation. I think the other one is that that's a big focus of yours in your life too. I mean, it's a room. Okay. Think of a house as a room. Okay. A lot of planets in the house. It's like there's a bunch of jars with that archetype in the pantry in that room. Which one is going to come off the shelf today? There's a big focus on that area of your life. And then, of course, I know this is maybe complicated for some of your people, but maybe some of your people will get this. So say you have a couple, 3 planets in your second house. Okay. What are the planets? And what houses or signs do those planets rule? So for example, I'm just going to pull one out of my hat. Let's say you have the sun sign in the second house. And let's say the sun rules Leo like it does. And let's say Leo in your chart is on your 8th house, which is other people's money, partners. So the sun, though, in your natal chart is in your second house, but it rules your 8th of other people's money and partnerships and philanthropy. Your earning power or your earning ability might include collaborating with other people, working in philanthropy, or working in estate planning, anything that's associated with the 8th house. That gives you so many more things in your bag of tricks. It's not just the planets. It's what houses do those planets rule? Because they have little goodies that they're carrying with them, that they're bringing into your second house, Now, there was a school of thought years ago, the Hubers, Lillian and Bruno Huber. I don't know if you know who they were. They were a European couple who did a lot of work on what we call stelliums, or lots of planets in a house. And I remember about 35 years ago, they were still alive. They were doing a workshop at one of the UX, I think. And this always struck me. It was Lillian, I think, that said it. When there's a whole lot of planets in a house, like lots, say 4 or 5, it's so packed in sometimes that this is what they said, and their research had shown, that it'll spill out into the opposite house.
Wow.
Because the house can't contain it. So it spills out. And I always remember that because when I have seen because you'll see certain years, you'll have a whole bunch of planets that are together.
Yeah.
And they're placed in a house. You'll see how it really expresses itself in the opposite point.
It's so interesting, Georgia. I was looking at one of her little friends. She had 6 planets in Capricorn in the second house. And there were so many planets in there that in my little app, the line had to expand itself.
Expand itself? Yeah.
So that's exactly what you're saying. It literally couldn't fit in the house in the graphic. And so they had to spill into the 3rd and the 1st just to contain all this Capricorn energy. That's fascinating.
So the question about that is with your little girl or your daughter.
This is my daughter's friend.
Your daughter's friend. Okay, maybe you don't know anything about her, but does she collaborate with other people? Does she do better when she's working with other people?
I would say yes.
Okay, that's because a lot of Capricorn in the second house might be very fearful about doing it on your own, but squeeze all that into the 8th house, which is other people that are there to help you. She might do very well, by the way, in volunteer work or philanthropy or helping people raise money in their organizations. Yeah, because it spills out into the 8th house.
Wow.
Yeah, that was not my work. That was Bruno and Lillian Huber who wrote
so it spills into the opposite, the opposing house of it, not on either side, not the 1st and the 3rd.
No, the opposite. It's like a pastry. Nobody cooks, but a funnel. Okay.
Yeah.
You put all this stuff in a funnel. Sometimes the funnel overfills, so it has to come out through the funnel. The energy will often flow into the opposite house. Opposite.
Yes. Okay,
so the 2nd would go into the 8th, or the 1st would go into the 7th. On that axis.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
That's a pretty trippy thing. I thought that was a fascinating thing, and I've looked at that for years. I think they're right. I think they were right in their research. But
you've seen that with client work, and you've seen that. Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, so this has been immensely helpful. The second house is one of the things you said is the house of what you desire. It's earthy, sensual, what you value. It's your currency. It's how you can use your currency. It's your attitude towards money and resources. It's part of what you called the rogue quadrant.
Yes, I didn't call it. That's Ray Merriman's.
That's right.
Yeah, that's his term. I want to make sure
Another
he gets
super
credit.
cool cat, Ray
Yes,
Merriman.
yes.
Okay. So this is where when you're establishing your independence, it's one of those first 3 houses. You're getting foundational lessons here. And a lot of your earning potential is encapsulated in this house. So understanding what sign is on the house cusp, understanding what planet or planets rule that sign and where they are in your chart. Will give you all these clues into these places in your life where you have a natural wiring to create value. It's what you value, and it's your currency.
Yes, it's your currency, and it's fertile. It's unlimited fertility.
Unlimited fertility.
It's unlimited fertility if people just pay attention to it. And if you look at the planets that are ruling that house, say you have a great Jupiter transit coming over the planet rules your second house, when whatever house it's in, make hay while the sun shines and use it. There'll be opportunities showing up. Or if it's a harder transit, maybe it's time to learn something new to get better at it, So it does, you don't have to have planets in the houses to know what's going on with your house.
Okay. Well, this has been immensely helpful. I can see so many of our community members right now just digging into their charts and
I'm sure
focusing on the second house and trying to figure it out. So if you loved this episode, if you love Georgia as a teacher, which we all do so much, that's why we were so excited when she said yes to be an Inner Circle astrologer with us in 2023. Enrollment is not open yet, but it will be open in the next few months. So you can go to astrologyhub.com/IC23 to get on the wait list, and you'll be the first to know when it's open. That's astrologyhub.com/IC23. Thank you so much. I learned so much.
It was fun.
Yes.
It's always fun to be with you guys.
Same. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of our community. And thank you, as always, for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode. Do not make any of your plans for 2023 until you've received the scoop on the astrological tides coming our way from some of the world's top astrologers. We're going to make that easy for you to do. On December 10th, we're hosting a free live panel event where we'll go through all the major astrology of next year. You're going to learn about the major transits, when they're happening, why they matter, how they may affect the world, and most importantly, how you can work with these transits most effectively in your relationships, with your money, your career, all of the major aspects of life. Don't get caught without your map for 2023. Get the gift of foresight at our live forecast event. Go to astrologyhub.com/2023 and join us now. And P.S., even if you can't make it live, make sure you sign up, because everybody who signs up will get the recording within 24 hours of the live event. That's astrologyhub.com/2023. Can't wait to see you there.